I always thought teaching my boy to hide money would save him. Turns out, he was teaching me how to hide a body. You don't expect your own blood to turn the game on you. Not in this life. But trust. That's a currency more fragile than the paper we bleed for. It started 2 months ago, in a one-bedroom back of a mechanic's shop we called home. The kind of place that smells like oil and regret. I just finished a job, small time, a pawn shop hit on 14th, clean, quick, no noise. I tossed a stack of hundreds on the table, the bills still warm from somebody else's sweat. Rule number 1, I told him, cash never stays in one place. You hide it where the rats can't find it, not the cops, not your friends, not even your woman. He was 15. Skinny, sharp eyes like his ma, but the silence? That was me. He nodded like he understood, but kids, they only learn by bleeding. We wrapped the bills in old rags, stuffed them under loose floorboards, behind vents, inside busted speakers. I showed him every trick I learned from 30 years of crawling through shadows. He watched quiet, memorizing more than I realized. Why hide it if it's ours? He asked. 'Cause nothing's ever ours, I said. We just borrow time from the devil and pay interest in blood. I thought I was raising him smart. Careful. Turns out I was giving him lessons for a future that didn't include me. That night, after we finished stashing the haul, I lit a cigarette and watched him scribble something in a notebook. Small, black leather, the kind you keep close when you've got secrets. I didn't ask. In our world, you learn not to pry. A week later, word hit the street. A stash house belonging to the Marquez crew got raided. Cops didn't find a dime. Rumor said someone tipped him, then swept the leftovers clean before sunrise. Only a handful of people knew that location. And one of them was me. I brushed it off, figured it was street gossip. But the next day, I found a fresh cut on my son's hand. Thin, clean, from a box cutter. Same kind we used to pry open vents. I asked him where it came from. He said, school project. But his eyes, they shifted. Quick, guilty. That night, I checked our stash under the floorboards. Half of it was gone. I didn't sleep. By morning, I had a choice. Confront him or pretend I didn't notice. I chose silence. In this business, words are weapons. I needed to see where his loyalty really was. Days turned to weeks. The street started humming with talk of a ghost thief, someone robbing crews, always one step ahead. No one saw him, no one knew him. But the pattern was clear. He wasn't after fame. He was after cash, clean hits, perfect timing. Just like I'd taught. Then, last Friday, I came home and smelled bleach. The kind of smell that ain't from cleaning floors, the kind that sticks to skin, masks something worse. There were droplets on the sink, faint red stains under the faucet. The drain was running slow. I called his name. No answer. I opened the back door, and there, buried shallow in the dirt, under a tarp, was a hand. Pale. Still wearing a silver ring I recognized from Marquez's lieutenant. I froze. For 30 years I'd done bad things, but this? This was different. This was my boy's doing. He stepped out of the shadows behind me, calm as a priest. You said to hide what matters, Pop, he said. So I did. I looked at him, really looked, and realized the kid I thought I was teaching was gone. In his place stood something colder, sharper. A survivor. My reflection, distorted. You killed him? I asked. He didn't blink. He found our stash. I fixed it. That was the moment I understood. I hadn't raised a son. I'd built a weapon. And now the streets were whispering our name. He stood there, hands steady, eyes flat. He called himself Blood, my son said. Everybody else did too. The ring glinted on the dead man's finger like the punchline to a bad joke. Blood. A name I knew from rumor and bruises. Marquez's left hand. The kind of guy who walked into rooms and made light switch off by itself. I made myself breathe. In, out. Tell me what happened, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone older, someone tired of counting losses. He waited by the alley, my boy said. Asked where you were. Said you owed interest for breathing. I told him to leave. He laughed. Then he pushed me. So I reached for the wrench. He didn't say the rest. He didn't have to. The wrench lay a few feet away, quiet as a grave marker. There are moments a father decides what kind of man he is. I could turn him in and call it love. Or I could step into the dark and call it family. I looked at the shallow dirt, the tarp, the ring. My choice weighed less than the world pressing on his shoulders. "Okay," I said. "We can't leave him here." He blinked like he hadn't expected agreement. "You said to hide what matters." "Not people," I said, and heard my own hypocrisy rattle like chains. "But we'll make it right enough to live." We didn't speak a plan aloud. Talking makes things real in ways you can't undo. We worked on instinct instead, sweeping, wiping, hauling without touching the parts of the truth that burned. I kept my movements broad, clumsy on purpose, the way I'd taught him, never precise enough to teach someone else how to do it. He watched, then did his own version. Faster, cleaner, as if he'd been practicing in his head for years. "Enough bleach," I told him. He shook his head once. "Smell tells stories. You taught me that." We wrapped the ring with the hand in a rag. I told him to toss it. He reached for a coffee can instead. "Separate," he said. "Red herrings swim better when they're alone." I stared at him. Some devil had taken my lessons and evolved them. We moved blood, because leaving him under shallow dirt was daring the sun to talk. The shop's back gate squealed like a guilty conscience. Somewhere a dog barked with the rhythm of a clock. The city doesn't sleep, it patrols. We loaded weight that felt like every mistake I ever made. My back screamed, my knees swore revenge, but I kept going. He didn't complain once. He had the quiet of a storm eye. We reached the ravine where the old rail line had given up decades ago. The air carried rust and wet leaves. A place that had seen worse than us and kept its mouth shut. I didn't think about rituals or recipes. I refused to think about them. We just did what men do when they can't afford to pray. When it was done enough to be called done, we stood in the dark and listened to our breathing. The night took the secret like a loan. On the walk back, his voice finally cracked. "You mad at me?" "I'm mad at the world," I said. "And a little at myself for building one you had to survive." He nodded. "I didn't want to." "I know." I stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. "Listen to me. Tomorrow, you go to school." He started to protest, then swallowed it. Like nothing happened. Because something did. And the only way to keep it in the past is to pretend the future's possible. Back at the shop, the bleach had settled into the walls like a rumor you can't scrub out. He took the small black notebook from his pocket and tore out 3 pages. He lit them with a match and watched the paper curl into memory. "What was that?" I asked. "Practice plans," he said. "For what?" "For not dying." He slept on the cot with his shoes on. I sat by the window, watching the street trade faces, night crew to morning faces, like cards in a dirty deck. At dawn, a police cruiser rolled by slow enough to notice dust on our door. It didn't stop. Not yet. Every light switch in the city felt like a rifle trigger. I sent him off with a packed bag and a lecture I disguised as nothing at all. "Don't be a ghost today," I said. "Be boring." He smiled the way kids used to when their teeth were still growing in. "I can do boring." When the bell over the shop door chimed at 10, I flinched. It wasn't Marquez's men. It was a detective I knew by reputation, a woman with eyes that classified lies by breed. She flashed a badge and a smile that didn't reach those eyes. "Morning." She looked around at the grease, the parts, the calendar 3 months out of date. "You the owner?" "Sometimes," I said. "Name's Castillo." She glanced at the sink, at the floor. I'd cleaned, but the bleach was a choir that wouldn't stop singing. "Mind if I ask about your neighbor?" "Which one?" "The one called Blood." She said it like a fact coming home to roost. "He's missing." I shrugged. My neighbors are crankshafts and debt collectors. "Can't say I'll miss either." She took in the shop again, cataloging. "Funny thing. Folks say he asked about you yesterday." Folks love using my name to season their stories. Castillo slid a card onto the counter. "If you see him, tell him I'm looking." If you see anyone looking for him, tell me first. Why? Because dead men don't talk, but the guys who make them that way do, once they figure out who's next. She tapped the card. You'd be surprised how many tough guys want a witness when the tide turns. After she left, I watched her reflection shrink in the front window until it was a thumbnail of trouble. The bell chimed again. This time it was family, the kind you inherit from crime instead of blood. Tito, a runner with a smile you never trusted and a jaw that was always chewing gum. "Boss wants to see you," he said. He meant Marquez. He didn't have to say it twice. Now. Yesterday. I locked the shop and told my bones to stop making noise. The drive to Marquez's spot took exactly as long as a prayer and half a confession. Inside, the room smelled like cigar and money. Marquez sat behind a desk that had seen more apologies than ink. "You hear anything strange last night?" he asked without hello. "All I hear anymore is my own heartbeat," I said. He chuckled. "Poetry now. Must be getting old." He flicked a photo across the desk. It was the lieutenant's hand with the ring, the silver catching light like a wink. The picture was crisp, taken before the dirt and the dark. "Pretty, huh?" Marquez said. He liked to flash it. Called himself Blood. I called him useful. "You want condolences or answers?" "I want my man back," he said gently. "Or the truth wrapped in something I can spend. Someone's been touching what isn't theirs. Stashes gone. Heartbeats too. That's a lot of coincidence for a small city." "Cops," I offered. "Cops don't move like that." He studied me the way a butcher studies weight. "Whoever did this knows how we hide things." The words landed between us like a mirror. I kept my face still. "Looks like you need tighter friends." He smiled without teeth. "Maybe I do." When I got back to the shop, the black notebook sat on the table where he'd left it. He'd been careful. The pages he'd burned were gone, the spine warm from a pocket that had been his only safe deposit box. I shouldn't have opened it. Fathers shouldn't open their sons' secrets. I opened it anyway. Inside were crude maps of the neighborhood, circles around storm drains, vents, rooftops, school schedules intersecting with delivery routes. Nothing explicit, nothing that could teach a stranger much, just enough to prove one thing. He'd been planning exits since before he met Blood. The bell over the door chimed again. I snapped the notebook shut. My boy stood there, hair damp from rain that hadn't started, eyes seeing everything. Behind him, two shadows crossed the street and didn't bother pretending they were anything else. "Pop," he said softly. "We got company." He didn't mean the men outside. He meant the future, knocking. The men outside didn't knock. They took up positions like they owned the sidewalk and were doing me a favor by not owning the floor inside. One leaned on a lamppost, pretending it could hold him. The other stared through the glass so hard the bell over the door rattled without touching it. "Back room," I told my boy without moving my lips. "Homework." He slid behind the curtain like smoke, not a sound, not a drag on the air. The bell chimed. The lamppost lost a friend. "Afternoon," the first one said, smiling the way a wolf smiles when he's got dental coverage. "Marquez sends his warmth." "He should keep it," I said. "It'll be winter soon, and kindness doesn't stack." They walked the perimeter with their eyes, the way I'd taught rookies once upon a stupider time, corners first, then the ceiling, then the ground. They were looking for the story the room wanted to tell. The bleach smell tried to tell it. My silence told it better. "Heard you got a visitor last night," the taller one said, eyes pausing on the sink. "Called himself Blood." "Lot of men call themselves what they wish they were," I said. "You here to sell me a different name?" The shorter one, the one doing the staring, stepped closer. "We're here to take you to the man who doesn't like unanswered questions." "I already paid my dues at church." "You'll pay twice," he said, and a knuckle cracked under a leather glove like punctuation. Behind the curtain, a shadow flickered. My heart tried to climb my throat and bargain with God. I coughed it back down. "You boys want coffee?" I asked, buying minutes like they were life preservers. "Don't drink anything I didn't open," the tall one said, but he sat anyway, like habit was stronger than caution. His partner stayed standing. He was the kind that only sat for judges and mothers. I put on a pot and let the machine hiss and complain. The noise gave my boy time to move further back, leave by the service door like a rumor escaping a mouth. Or stay. I didn't know. Not knowing was a new kind of pain. You know what happens, the standing one said, when a man goes missing in this city? He shows up in stories other men tell to make themselves large. He shows up on a timeline, he corrected. A line with dots on it. The last had your name next to it. The coffee finished with a sigh. I poured 2 cups to prove goodwill and drank from a third to show I didn't poison the well. The tall one took his and pretended it wasn't decent. The other sniffed like a bloodhound fresh out of patience. You want to frisk the place, Frisk, I said. You'll find bolts, grease, and an old man trying to work. We'll find a trail, the standing one said. There's always a trail. Depends who's looking, I said, and what they expect to find. He moved to the curtain. My body moved with him before my brain caught up. He lifted it and froze, because Detective Castillo stood in the doorway behind him like a punchline you didn't know you'd told. Gentlemen, she said, permit from the fire marshal for 2 goons to loiter in one exit. Their shoulders tightened the way old rope tightens before it snaps. The tall one set his cup down gentle. We're customers. Buy something, Castillo said. Preferably alibis. They go fast. The standing one flicked the curtain closed and smiled at me instead of her. We'll be back, he said. Be careful, I replied. Prices go up after dark. They left with a bell complaining softly about manners. Castillo didn't watch them go. She watched me watch them, and wrote the whole observation down without touching her notebook. You keep interesting company, she said. I run a shop. People break. I fix. She took in the bleach stink and the way my hands shook slightly around the cup. You got a kid, she said, like she was noting a new leak. Lot of people do. Kids make men do stupid brave things. She stepped closer, not invading, just letting her presence lay on top of the room like a new coat of paint. If someone's squeezing you because a ghost is missing, you call me. Ghosts have a way of dragging the living into their graves. Is that the department motto now? It's my calendar quote of the month. She placed a small recorder on the counter, clicked it off, set it there like a pebble. When you're ready to tell me a story you're not ashamed of, press the button. I'll hear it. And if I don't have that story, then you'll have someone else's. Those end badly. She left, taking half the room with her, the half where lies behaved. I lifted the curtain. My boy had done what good students do. He'd vanished. He'd also left the black notebook in the open, a choice or a challenge. I didn't touch it. My fingerprints had enough to answer for. The day stretched thin. Every noise argued with another noise. I pretended to work. Men came for parts and left with change and gossip. By closing, my jaw hurt from clenching like I was saving teeth for winter. I locked up and headed to the place I went when thinking needed a ceiling, an old burial of concrete under the bridge where the river whispered secrets to broken shopping carts. He was there. Of course he was. He knew my maps because he'd been drawn on them since the day he took his first breath. You sent them away, he said. I borrowed time. Sending implies they won't return. He nodded, kicking a pebble into the dark water. You going to tell me to run? I'm going to ask you to listen. I faced him. The city hummed above us, oblivious. We got 2 problems that think they're one, the law and Marquez. The law asks questions, pretends it believes the answers. Marquez skips the pretending. Both want an easy narrative. We don't give it. He watched me the way he watched a safe he hadn't cracked yet. What's the hard narrative? One where blood wasn't our gravity. One where someone else touched him first. We lean into truth. He came here, he pushed you, it got bad. I won't put it on you, he said, sharp like a snapped wire. If I talk alone. You won't talk, I said. Not yet. Talking is a luxury for people with witness protection and a different name. We build confusion. We move money. We make it look like the ghost thief had bigger ghosts. You mean bait. I mean noise. I pulled an envelope from my jacket, Thin, much thinner than our old days. We move a chunk where it can be seen by the right eyes. We let two crews sniff the same scent. We let them fight over a shadow while we walk. He took the envelope but didn't look inside. You always told me not to poke the hive. I told you not to do it without a suit. I put a hand on his shoulder. I'm the suit. He almost smiled. So you're going to stand between me and bees now? That's what fathers do when their sons teach them they're not the only ones who can sting. A train screamed somewhere distant like a warning delivered late. He tucked the envelope away, then froze, eyes past my shoulder. I turned and saw Tito at the mouth of the underpass, thumb up like a hitchhiker under bad lighting. You got fans, my boy murmured. Tito whistled soft. Boss changed his mind. He wants the talk now. I already gave him my voice, I said. He wants the echo, Tito answered. And maybe the notebook. My son's spine tightened. I didn't have to look to know his hand was near the small of his back, where childhood used to live. Notebook stays, I said. Tito's eyes flicked past me, found my boy's face, measured it for a box. Bring the kid, he said. No, I said. He's got school. At night. Tito grinned. Night school's where you really learn. I stepped between them fully, felt my years like armor. Tell Marquez I'll come alone. Boss don't like loneliness. He will tonight. Tito weighed the conversation, then shrugged, the way messengers do when the message gets heavier. Don't be late, he said, and vanished like a bad idea you know you'll have again. We walked out of the underpass together, father and son, shadow and echo. He spoke first. You're not going alone. I am. You're not. I'm the suit, I said again. You're the future. Suits get torn. Futures don't, if I can help it. He stared hard enough to bend steel. You said we lean into truth. Truth is I'm the reason. Truth is I'm the man who taught you how to survive a world too ugly to look straight at. I tilted his face up with a finger under his chin. I'll take what comes. He took a breath that made him look 12 again. Then take this. He pulled the black notebook out and tore a page. On it, a sketch of the room where Marquez liked to sit like a king. Arrows, corners, a note, blind spot behind the cabinet. You've been there? I asked. Once. Dropping off a message for a guy who didn't have hands to carry it. He handed me the page. Blind spots exist so men feel safe. Make him feel safe. I slipped the page inside my jacket. It felt like wearing his heartbeat. Go home, I said. If I'm not back by sunrise, burn the rest of that book and disappear into somewhere I never drew. He nodded, but his eyes promised mutiny if the sun took too long. On my way to Marquez's, the city looked like it did when I was young. Mean, loud, full of places to leave parts of yourself and call it progress. I walked in without preamble and found the room with the desk and the ghosts. Marquez smiled with half his mouth. Alone, he said, approving like a teacher who finally got through to the stupid kid. You wanted an echo, I said, and sat in the chair that had broken more men than bad habits. He steepled fingers. Tell me where Blood is. I can tell you where he was, I said. And who else wants you to think I put him where he's not? He leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Surprise me. Your left-hand man kept 2 sets of books, I said softly. One for you. One for someone who promised him a crown if he beheaded the king. I let the lie ride the truth's shoulders. Stashes didn't go missing by accident. He fed a rival your maps. He was the ghost. Then he got greedy and came for my boy to cover his tracks. Marquez didn't blink. Men like him learned not to. But something flinched behind his gaze. Names, he said. Names are currency, I answered. You don't hand them out for free in a market like this. His hand drifted toward a drawer where a small metal argument waited. I saw the blind spot in my head, the sketch like an extra pulse. I didn't come to bargain, I said. I came to pay. I slid the torn sketch onto the desk, my boy's cramped arrows pointing at a cabinet that hadn't moved since the last betrayal. Look behind you. I knew what was there. I didn't know who would reach it first. Marquez didn't turn right away. Men who live by paranoia make it wait so they can feel in charge of the thing that owns them. His eyes stayed on me, studying whether I wanted him to look. Then, slow as a sermon, he pushed back his chair and pivoted toward the cabinet. "Cute," he said, voice calm. "You bring me a child's drawing." "Look lower," I said. He crouched. His hand slid along the baseboard, then stalled. I saw the moment touch found truth. He pulled the cabinet an inch, then another. Dust sighed. Behind it, not a wall, an inset like a missing tooth, and inside the hollow a box the size of a Bible, matte and smug. Above it, a lens smaller than a fly's eye. Marquez's face didn't move, but the air did. "Who put that there?" he asked the room. "The man who liked to be called Blood," I said. "Insurance policy. For when kings forget who keeps their calendar." He didn't answer, didn't curse. He lifted the box out like it was a sleeping baby and set it on the desk. No lock I could see, just a slide with friction. He opened it. Phones, 3 of them, rubber-banded. A ledger thin enough to pass as a menu. A single key wrapped in red thread. And the lens, a thread leading to a wire running up into the ceiling, disappearing where secrets go. He thumbed one of the phones alive. It blinked with a blank's patience. The ledger had neat numbers divided by names that would bleed if read aloud. He flipped a page, then another. His mouth made a small shape I'd only seen once before, when a man realizes the people he pays were getting paid twice. 2 sets of books, I repeated. "One for you. One for whoever was auditing your throne." "Who?" His voice was soft feral. "Could be anyone you trust," I said, because in our world that was everyone and no one. He looked up, and the lens stared back like an old debt. He snapped the wire with 2 fingers. "If this is your plant—" "It isn't," I said. "If it was, I wouldn't bring you to it." He believed me enough to hate it. The office door cracked open and Tito slid in like a rumor again. He saw the box and stopped smiling. Point went to gravity. "Who else knows?" Marquez asked him. "About what?" Tito tried, then saw it wasn't a multiple-choice kind of night. "Blood kept his own gospel," he admitted. "Said it kept men honest." "Honest?" Marquez laughed once, a dry sound. "He wouldn't know honest if it paid him." He slipped the key with the red thread into his pocket, then closed the box and placed the ledger on top like a crown. "This stays," he said to the air, which meant it was already gone in his mind to a place only he knew. That's when the window popped. Not shattered, popped, like glass had decided to stop pretending it was solid. A line zipped past my ear and kissed the wall. Tito dropped. Not a man. A shadow behind him took the hit and folded. Marquez's hand moved to the drawer. Mine moved toward the blind spot. The room changed shape. "Down," I said, because I didn't have time to say the rest. Bullets began to argue with the furniture. Paper leapt and died. Marquez rolled behind the desk with a grunt that had age in it. I hit the floor and slid toward the cabinet's shadow. Something burned past my shoulder with a voice like anger. 2 more men I didn't know tried to be brave and discovered bravery was heavier than it looks. "Walls have eyes," I shouted. "And so do rooftops." Marquez cursed this time, Spanish and prayer mixed. "Tito," he snarled. Tito crawled, lifted, fired 2 blind shots toward the dark outside. Screams answered from somewhere high. The office door flew open again, and a different kind of shadow filled it. Detective Castillo, gun steady, voice iron. "Police," she said, and the word fought the room for authority. "Drop it." No one listened. Why would they? Country of deaf men. She took stock in a second. The broken glass, the ledger, me on the ground, Marquez leaking from somewhere I hadn't seen yet, Tito's eyes huge with choices. "Now!" she barked, and when no one obeyed, she made it simpler by squeezing off a shot that cracked the ceiling tile like a sensible god. Silence found us, brief, forced. I raised my empty hands. Tito didn't. Marquez stayed behind the desk, the ledger gone, sleight of hand by someone who'd never worked birthdays for children. Castillo's eyes flicked to me. "You again." "Me," I agreed. "Tell your friends on the roof they've run out of roof." "They're not my friends," I said. Everyone here is your friend until proven otherwise, she said, then stepped sideways just as another round split the air where her head had been. She fired back, low, controlled. Somewhere above, a body remembered gravity. Marquez groaned, slid into view from behind the desk. Blood crawled down his shirt like a slow idea. "Detective," he said politely, as if he were at a fundraiser. "We have mutual enemies. We have one problem at a time," she said. "First, you three stop breathing like wolves. Second, I need the room to stop trying to die." I crawled closer to Marquez, kept my hands visible like a man at confession. "You hit bad. Through and through," he gritted. "Shoulder. Like a signature." "Whose?" "My mother's," he said, equal parts pride and fury. He pressed a wad of cloth against the wound and hissed. His eyes found mine. "You brought me the box. That earns you a minute." "A minute to do what?" "To hear a truth. Blood wasn't feeding the cops." He nodded toward the window. "He was feeding Moreno." He said the name like spitting a tooth. "And Moreno just found out his pantry is empty." Moreno, the rival that kept his empire across the river, the one who smiled like a saint while dogs ate under his table. The world shrank to a thread between two men who wanted to be the only shadow. Castillo's radio crackled. "Shots fired, requesting backup," a voice said. She didn't look away from us. "Backup's 10 minutes out," she told me, which meant 5 if God liked her and 20 if he didn't. "Who's shooting?" "Everybody," I said. "But especially the past." Her gaze dropped to a smear of red on the floor, then to a tiny curl of red thread near Marquez's shoe. She noticed everything. "Where's the ledger?" Marquez's shrug was eloquent. "Lost in the chaos." "Found in the evidence," she countered, but she didn't move to take it because she couldn't see it, and because living outranked collecting. A shadow crossed the window again, and she pivoted, fired once more, crisp. The shadow fell. The room inhaled. Tito turned his head just enough to show he was calculating the value of shooting me in front of a cop. I turned mine just enough to show him I'd notice. He relented, barely, the way cowards do when bravery isn't paying. "My son," I said to Castillo, surprising even myself. "If Moreno knows about the box, he knows about me. If he knows about me, then the kid who looks like you is a target," she finished, eyes cutting to me with something that wasn't pity. "Address." I hesitated the length of a heartbeat. She read the pause and nodded, more to herself than to me. "Fine. Keep your secrets. But if I find him first, he stays found." "Detective," Marquez breathed. "You want to save a child?" "Save mine too." He smiled, pained. "They're all my children." "Don't make me dislike you more," she said, but the corner of her mouth twitched. Sirens began as a far idea becoming near. "We're moving," she decided. "Hands where I can see them. You," she pointed the barrel at me, "are walking in front." "Lovely," I said, and stood, the floor tilting like a drunk memory. As I straightened, my foot nudged something small. The ledger, flat under the fallen calendar. It touched my shoe like a cat seeking adoption. I didn't look down. I also didn't step away. "Exit," Castillo said. We were 5 feet from the door when the world tried to teach us new math. The hallway erupted. 2 more of Moreno's men spilling in, eyes starved. Tito fired first, for once picking a side. 1 dropped. The second swung his muzzle and found me. I moved on instinct, shoving the desk into the doorway with a shoulder I stopped feeling 10 years ago. The shot took the doorframe, spat splinters. Castillo pushed forward, not back, and put the second man down like a problem solved. Smoke hung. Silence came back, winded. "Go," she ordered again, now a growl. "We're done with this scene." We spilled into the corridor, the cop, the king, the errand boy, and the man who pretends he's a mechanic. In the crush, the ledger leapt into my jacket like it had always belonged there. I didn't plan it. Maybe the book planned me. Outside, night had grown teeth. Flashing lights were still blocks away, chewing distance. I turned my head just enough to see Marquez's face go pale. He grabbed my sleeve with his good hand and pulled me close enough for the blood on his breath to count. "Your boy," he said. "If Moreno's smart, he's already sending a hand to collect what hurts you. There's only one place I'd look first if I wanted to find your ghost." "Where?" "Where you taught him to hide what matters." He didn't have to say the rest. The shop. The stupid little home full of bleach and hope. The bell over the door with its polite complaints. I broke left. Castillo shouted my name, which wasn't my name. Tito reached for me and found air. Sirens turned the corner, throwing blue at brick. Somewhere, someone opened a door to a quieter life and closed it again when they saw us. I ran, old bones stitching a new lie with every step. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I didn't answer. I turned down an alley that used to hold my youth and came out 2 streets from the shop. The block looked asleep. The kind of sleep that pretends it doesn't dream. The front window was intact. The bell was quiet. I pushed the door and the chime gave me that same small complaint it always did. Inside, the bleach had given up arguing with the air. The counter sat, the stool leaned, the world played innocent. "Kid," I said, the word too big for the room. No answer. Then I saw it on the workbench, the black notebook, open to a fresh page, his handwriting a rush that still kept its order. 4 words. Not a plea. Not an apology. "I taught you well." Underneath, a drawing, 3 arrows pointing to the floor drain behind the compressor. And next to the arrows, a thumbprint, pressed in something that had dried dark. It wasn't his. It wasn't mine. It was a signature I recognized from a silver ring. The print wasn't ink. It was the kind of brown that turns black when it remembers air. A smear shaped by a thumb and signed by a ring that used to flash like a threat. I could see the oval bite the way you can see a dog's teeth in a healed scar. Someone had been standing where my boy stands. Someone had leaned over the bench like it belonged to them. The arrows pointed to the drain behind the compressor. I didn't need tools. I didn't need to be clever. I just needed to trust that he'd made our language fluent. I moved the compressor the way you move a body without making it a ceremony. The drain cap stared up. I lifted it, slow, because slow is how you teach your nerves to obey. Down there, 6 inches from the lip, something winked. Not money. Not metal meant to buy anything but time. I reached, pinched, pulled. A bag, clear, sealed, cheap. Inside, the silver ring. Blood's ring. In the same bag, a drive no bigger than a thumbnail and a folded scrap with my son's handwriting, cramped and fast. If this is gone, they were here. My throat closed around a curse. For a second I saw the room through another man's eyes. The bleach, the holes in the wall where screws used to be, the scuffs on the floor from a chair pushed back too hard. He'd come back to collect a debt that couldn't be paid. Or Moreno had sent someone to search the place the way a dog searches its old owner. I slid the ring into my pocket and the drive into the other, like balancing scales. The paper crackled once. Under the first line, smaller words. "Play it before you choose." I didn't choose yet. The bell over the door wouldn't be polite twice in one night, and I didn't have time to make the room look innocent again. I killed the lights, left one on in back so a silhouette could lie for me if it had to, and crossed to the office where the old computer slept. The drive slid into a port with a click that sounded too loud. The screen took a breath, then the file opened without a name. Video. Shaky. The alley behind the shop, yesterday's light. Blood's face, closer than comfort, picking spinach out of his teeth that wasn't there. My son's voice, smaller than mine, bigger than fear. "Leave," he said. Blood laughed. "Your old man owes. You're at the wrong register." Blood's hand shot out, shoved my boy into the dumpster. The picture jolted. A clatter of metal. Then the frame steadied and I understood. My son had propped the phone to see what his hands couldn't afford to hold. We were watching what I had refused to imagine. Blood stepped forward, leaning, saying something low and rotten. My boy reached behind him, found a shape, swung. The phone slid, tilted, caught half the blow and the sound of it. When the picture found level again, Blood was on his knees, stunned at the existence of gravity and consequences. He had time to make one choice and picked the wrong one. He lunged. The second swing was shorter. Final. After that, Only breathing and the kind of silence that makes men religious. The clip ended. I stared at the blank screen until a ghost traced itself there. Self-defense, the clean version. Survival, the dirty truth. Both could be true in a world that hated facts. Play it before you choose. Choose what? Which devil to buy from, the law or the king? Which enemy to name? Which lie to swallow so we could keep walking? The bell chimed. I closed the file, plucked the drive, shut the computer down with a prayer that sounded like please don't, and stepped out to meet whatever the night wanted now. Two men stood just inside the doorway, silhouettes trying to decide whether they were wolves or accountants. Morinos, by the cut of the leather and the dead energy. The one on the left had shoulders that made his head look rented. The one on the right had eyes that didn't blink enough. "Shop's closed," I said, polite as a tombstone. "Open for us," the left one said, and locked the door behind him. The sound was a period at the end of a sentence I didn't write. "You boys forget your receipts from earlier?" My hands were still empty. My pockets weren't. "Boss wants to talk about a ring," the right one said. "And a boy." My heart did a new trick I didn't teach it. I shrugged like my ribs weren't trying to collapse. I found rings in oil pans all the time. People forget what their fingers wear. "Not this ring," he said, and pulled out a photo. Close up. The oval. The shallow engraving that looked like waves if you never saw the ocean. "You bring pictures because you don't have the real thing," I said to buy seconds, maybe thirds. "Boss figures you do. Boss figures you bring it to him, with any film that says what he wants it to say, and maybe he doesn't visit your kid's school bus stop tomorrow morning." My son didn't take buses. He walked. He disappeared into alleys and came out different alleys. I swallowed that comfort because comfort is a liar. "Boss figures wrong," I said. "On timing, if nothing else. Then let's fix his watch." They took one step too far into my shop, and the place remembered it was mine. I didn't reach for glory. I reached for the compressor switch and let the thing cough awake, a roar that could be anything from outside. While the left one flinched at the sound, I threw the coffee tin that lives by the cash register. It hit his chest and spilled bolts like rain. He swore and slipped. The right one drew, but a drawer I yanked slammed his wrist against wood. The gun went wide and kissed a calendar girl's smile. I moved through the space I've known longer than I've known mercy, grabbed a wrench not for what it can do but for what it says, and held it like punctuation. "We're done," I told them. "We're starting," the right one hissed, but his wrist was thinking other thoughts. He looked down and saw his own blood with the wonder of a child. "Tell Moreno," I said, "that if he touches my boy, I bring him the ledger he doesn't even know he's in." They didn't understand yet, not the ledger part. But they understood the shape of a threat. The left one, still stepping on bolts, grimaced. "You think you scare him with books?" "I think books scare men who learn to count late." I turned the compressor off. The silence was holy. Go. They didn't want to. But they also didn't want to bleed here more than they already had. The right one took a last look around like he was trying to memorize the place for later nightmares. The left one unlocked the door. They left the way men leave church after a sermon they don't admit hit them. I locked the door behind them and slumped against it, feeling older than every bad decision I'd ever made. The drive burned in my pocket like a choice I hadn't made yet. The ring sat heavy as guilt. I thought of Castillo's card on my counter, the little recorder she'd left next to it. I thought of Marquez holding his shoulder like a secret. I thought of my boy's thumbprint left neat on a note to a man who needed clarity more than air. I called a number that wasn't on my phone. I dialed it from memory I wished I didn't have. "You're either desperate or drunk," Castillo said by way of hello. "Neither," I said. "I'm a father." That got me a pause. "Where?" "Not here. A place with lights. A place with people who won't look up." She named a diner. I agreed. Before I left, I slid the black notebook into the oven and set it on the lowest ghost of heat. If someone came to find it, they'd find warmth and nothing written. I tucked the ledger deeper inside my jacket and the ring deeper inside the other and told the shop to be brave. The diner was half full of lonely men pretending coffee was love. Castillo sat in a booth with her back to the wall and a cup she hadn't drunk from. I slid in opposite and put the little recorder on the table between us like an offering. "You brought me a present," she said. "You left it first." I placed the drive on top. "This buys me something." "That depends what it is. It's a story you prefer to a worse story." She plugged the drive into a machine from the last decade and watched the clip without touching her coffee. The room blurred around us until there was only her face and the screen's light and the way her jaw tightened at the point where my son's life almost became a memorial. When it ended, she breathed out through her nose. "You should have called me then. I should have done a lot of things. I'm doing this one. Where's the kid? Where he's safest." The lie didn't make eye contact. "This proves what I need it to prove. It proves he was attacked," she said. "It proves he defended himself. It proves you're both in a hole and you keep digging with spoons." Her eyes narrowed. "What else did you bring?" "An idea." I kept the ledger where it was. Moreno had a man with a camera on Marquez. Marquez had a man with a ledger on Moreno. Blood sat between them, counting apples that weren't his. Now Blood is a memory, and the men who wanted to own him want each other's throats. I can give you one throat clean if you keep hands off the boy while I make the other one bleed into his own mess. "You're bargaining with felonies," she said, not unkindly. "I'm bargaining with fathers," I said. "You ever loved a person more than your badge?" Her silence wasn't empty. "Bring me the ledger," she said finally. "It's safe." "That wasn't the question. If I hand you the ledger, Marquez lives long enough to blame me, and Moreno dies slow enough to notice who aimed that bullet. I need 2 days. You get your headlines. You get a kid who walks into a station without cuffs. You get me, if that's the price after." She studied me like she was reading a map that refused to be to scale. "2 days," she said. "And you call me if anything breathes in your direction." "Everything breathes in my direction." "Then call me a lot." I left before she could taste her coffee. Outside, the night had more sirens than stars. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number again. I answered this time. A voice like a blade edge slid over my ear. "You keep souvenirs," Moreno said. "Bring me the ring." "And if I don't?" "Then I learn what your son's bones sound like when they argue with stairs." He hung up before I could sell him a different nightmare. I stood in the diner's neon and let my brain make a shape I didn't want to see. The school route, the alley, the shortcuts, the places you can fold a boy into and no one asks why the package is squirming. I ran. The city turned into a corridor. Corners bent toward me. I cut through lots and stories and ended up at the underpass where the river kept secrets better than men. He wasn't there. A cigarette ember burned in the dark, low, almost polite. "Took you long enough," a voice said from above the stairs. "Not my son's. Tito's." He stepped into light, hands empty to show off their emptiness. "Boss wants an exchange. Tonight." "Ring for boy," I said. "Ring for boy," he echoed. "Public place. No guns where eyes can see. Boss wants to look civilized while he acts otherwise." "Where?" "Tito told me. A park that pretended not to host deals, under a statue that wore pigeons like epaulets. Midnight." I looked at my watch like it mattered and told time to learn to fight. "Come alone," he added. "You'll be there," I said. "I'm nobody," he said, which was the truest thing he'd said all week. He left. The underpass swallowed his footsteps and saved them for later. I stood there with the ring in one pocket and the ledger in the other and a drive's ghost on my fingertips. If I gave Moreno the ring, he'd want the boy anyway. If I didn't, he'd break something he thought I couldn't live without to learn he was right. If I handed the ledger to Castillo tonight, she'd lock it up and the war would go public before I could build a shelter out of the pieces. Play it before you choose. I had played it. I chose. On my way back to the shop, the sky considered rain and decided against it. An old bus hissed past with 3 passengers and 2 stories. I unlocked the door and went straight to the oven. The notebook was warm, not hot. Good. I pulled it, flipped to the last page used. He'd written something new while I had been out being brave. "If he makes you give the ring, don't." And under that, smaller, "Make him take the blood." I stared at the words until they rearranged. Then I knew exactly where I had to go, who I had to meet before midnight, and what pocket I'd offer to the man who thought rings were trophies. I left the lights off when I closed the door behind me. The bell didn't complain. The city did. It always does when you decide you're done borrowing time. Midnight was a liar's hour, quiet enough to pretend you had control, dark enough to show you didn't. The park lay in the center of the city like a wound that healed wrong, fountains coughing rust, benches carving graffiti into silence. The statue stood over it all, a bronze soldier reaching for something he'd never touch. Moreno picked the spot because it looked noble. Men like him loved symbols, especially ones that could bleed for free. I got there 5 minutes early. You don't show up late to a man who kills clocks for sport. I had the ring in my pocket, the ledger in my jacket, and a decision heavier than either. Across the grass, 2 cars idled under trees that pretended to be cover. Moreno stepped out first, dressed like sin with a tailor. His smile carried the kind of peace only cruelty buys. "Evening, old thief," he said, strolling forward, no hurry in him. "You've been hard to catch." "I wasn't hiding," I said. "You were looking in mirrors." He laughed softly. "Maybe. But you have something of mine." "Depends which lie you like," I said. "You want a ring or a story?" He spread his hands. Rings glittered on 3 fingers. "Stories bore me. Rings I collect. You know the one." Behind him, 2 bodyguards fanned out, shapes too large for stealth. One carried a case, probably for me. The other carried nothing, which meant everything. I reached into my pocket, slow, let him see the curve of metal. "This what you're losing sleep over?" He took a step closer, eyes fixed on it. Blood thought he could trade loyalty for secrets. "He kept things I wanted. When he died, his debts became yours. That's how inheritance works." "And the boy?" I asked. Moreno's smile thinned. "Collateral. I keep him safe. You give me what's mine. Then we all walk away blessed. Blessings from you cost too much." He shrugged. "Then let's negotiate." The word sounded like a trigger. From behind a fountain, Tito emerged with my son beside him, wrists zip-tied, eyes steady. He wasn't scared, not the way kids are. He looked at me like we were still in the shop, like this was another lesson. "See," Moreno said. "Good faith. Now yours." I stepped forward, ring in palm. But as his hand extended, I saw the shape of the past in his eyes, the promise that once the deal closed, so would we. I tightened my fist. "Before I hand you anything," I said, "we clear the slate. You have no leverage." "I have the book," I said. He blinked. That told me enough. Marquez hadn't been lying. Moreno wanted the ledger because it told the truth about every dirty deal that built his throne. Names, numbers, accounts tucked into countries with no conscience. I pulled it halfway from my jacket. "You take the ring, I give the book to Castillo. She already has the tape. She'll know how to read this one." Moreno's calm cracked, a hairline fracture. "You're bluffing." "You think so?" I opened the cover just enough for the wind to taste the pages. "You kill me, it still finds her. You kill the boy, and every crew who lost a brother to your taxes finds out exactly where their money sleeps." He studied me, breathing through his nose. The statue above us cast long shadows, like soldiers lining up to watch judgment. Finally he nodded to Tito. "Release him." Tito cut the ties. My boy rubbed his wrists, walked toward me without being told. He stopped at my shoulder, not behind. I could feel the heat of his stare aimed at Moreno. "You have what you came for," I said, opening my hand to show the ring again. Moreno reached, but the sound behind us stopped him. Engines, more than 2. Headlights flared at the park's edge, washing over bronze and grass. Police cruisers. Castillo stepped out first, gun lowered but not asleep. "Evening, gentlemen," she called. "Nice night for confessions." Moreno's mouth twisted. "You invited guests." "I invited balance," I said. "You brought the audience." Castillo walked forward, badge glinting. "We have you on multiple counts already. Add extortion and kidnapping, it's a full set." "Proof?" he asked, smiling again. I held up the drive. Enough to start the song. Her eyes flicked from me to him, reading the distance. You both want to walk out alive, she said. Then give me something. Moreno moved fast, faster than pride should allow. He grabbed the ring from my palm, shoved it into his coat, and drew a pistol smoother than breath. My son lunged before thought caught up, slammed his shoulder into Moreno's arm. The shot went wild, cracking bronze instead of bone. Tito froze, torn between loyalties he didn't own. Castillo fired once, deliberate. The bullet took Moreno's leg, folding him to one knee. His gun skittered into grass. He stared at the wound, disbelief staining his face. You don't shoot kings, he hissed. You're not a king, she said. You're inventory. Officers swarmed from the cruisers, shouting commands, disarming Tito, hauling Moreno up like a sack. Through it all, my boy stood still, breathing hard, eyes never leaving me. Castillo came close, holstering her weapon. That ledger better be real. It's real, I said, handing it over. It buys his freedom. She nodded once. And yours. I stopped believing in mine a long time ago. She looked at my son. He walks clean if the story holds. It will, I said. It's the truth. They took Moreno away, his curses dragging behind him like chains. Tito went quiet, head down. The cruiser's lights painted the statue blue and red, like the sky couldn't decide whose side it was on. When the park emptied, only Castillo, my boy, and I remained. She flipped through the ledger, lips tight. This is going to burn half the city, she said. Then maybe it'll light something worth keeping, I said. She closed it. You've got a choice now. Disappear, or help me clean. I looked at my son, who had seen too much and learned too fast. We're good at disappearing. He shook his head. Running's what got us here. Castillo watched the exchange like a teacher waiting for the right answer. I breathed once, tasted night and smoke. We'll help, I said. She nodded. Tomorrow morning, you come to the precinct. Tell it straight. No embellishments. I'll try honesty, I said. New skill. She left us there under the statue, the city humming distant judgment. My boy touched the pocket where the ring had been. What now? He asked. Now we hide something else, I said. Not money. Not bodies. Just ourselves. We walked out of the park as dawn began to tease the horizon, the sirens fading behind us. Somewhere in the city, a ledger was turning into justice, a ring was bagged as evidence, and a name like blood was finally just dust. But I knew the game wasn't over. Men like Moreno don't die in cages, they multiply. And somewhere, Marquez was nursing his wound, waiting for the world to tilt again. For the first time in a long while, I felt something close to peace, sharp and temporary as breath. Beside me, my son walked silent, eyes forward. The night had taught him everything I hadn't meant to. We turned toward the shop, toward whatever came next, carrying the weight of what we'd hidden and the promise of what we'd finally bring into light. Morning came in gray, the kind that makes a city look like it's reconsidering itself. We didn't sleep. We sat on milk crates in the shop, the compressor a quiet giant, the bleach finally giving up its sermon. My boy cupped a mug he didn't drink from. The recorder Castillo left sat between us like a conscience. You ready to tell it straight? I asked. He nodded. Straight enough not to bend later. We went to the precinct at 8, which is the hour men with jobs arrive and men with secrets pretend they have them. Castillo met us with ink on her fingers and a look that said she'd picked fights with bigger things than us and won enough to stay interested. Sit, she said. Talk. We did. He told it the way the video told it, spare, unsentimental. No heroics. He said blood pushed. He said the wrench fell into his hand because gravity loves a narrative. He said the second swing happened because the first one wasn't a sentence, only a comma. I filled in the parts where old men are allowed to fill in, the way the alley narrows, how sound changes when rage takes to the stage, what your hands feel like when you realize they can't afford to shake. After. Castillo asked, pen quiet now. We moved fear, I said. We hit a man because we didn't want to bury a boy. She let the words sit until they stopped trying to escape. The ring, she said. You palmed it, made him take it. Make him take the blood. That was your son's note. I looked at the kid. He looked back. We knew, he said, whoever took the ring would sleep with it. Blood on it. Prints on it. A story that writes itself faster than we could. Castillo's mouth tilted, admiration trying to put on a frown. It writes one chapter, she said. Not the book. Moreno's facing a library regardless. He'll scream framing. Defense attorneys get paid to conjugate that verb. Let him scream, I said. Let him be loud on the way down. She tapped the folder. Marquez. Your ledger didn't love him either, I said. But love isn't what keeps a man like him breathing. We'll see, she said, and closed the file. One more thing. Witness protection. The words came out clean, bright. They sat on the table smelling like paint thinner. My boy stiffened. I watched the door, the windows, the ceiling vents, the way men do when help comes in a uniform that looks too neat. We're good at our own kind, I said. Your kind just bought you a week, she countered. Maybe 2. Protection buys longer. New names, different weather. It keeps your blood from being a trail. He glanced at me, that flicker of childhood flaring. I put a hand on the table to keep it from shaking. My blood learned to hide, I said. Then hide well, she replied. But my offer doesn't stay fresh. When it spoils fast. We left with a paper that said we'd been heard and a signature that looked like it was trying to run off the page. Outside, the city had chosen sun after all. It hit the metal of cars and made it look like hope. I didn't trust it. By noon the news trucks were chewing curbs. Moreno's face looped across screens with captions that used words like alleged and tones that meant enjoy. The ledger started doing what ledgers do when they've had enough of drawers, spilling names like marbles down a church aisle. Accounts were frozen. Phones sang to people who didn't want concerts. Half the city learned what the other half had been charging them. I watched a clip of Marquez walking into a clinic under his own steam, jacket over the sling, smile polite as a razor. He winked at a camera the way a man winks at a bullet that didn't learn its job. Back at the shop, the bell chimed and Tito stood there with hands in view, cheeks shaved too close like he'd been trying to scrape off responsibility. You're supposed to be in a cell, I said. I was supposed to be a lot of things, he said. Boss sent me to tell you, debt square. I laughed, ugly. Since when does a king pay with forgiveness? Since you threw him a life raft strapped with dynamite that didn't go off. He shrugged. He says you bought your minute and spent it right. He says the boy's safe from him. And from you? My son asked. Tito's eyes flicked to the kid, then away. I'm just a messenger, he said, and left like men do when they know the next job is unemployment. We burned the notebook that night, page by page, not as ceremony, but as diet. When you stop eating a thing, you stop craving it. The flames licked up the little maps and the arrows and the shorthand that had kept us breathing. The last sheet he hesitated on, our first sketch together, the floorboards and vents, the X marks where Cash went to sleep. Let it go, I said. He fed it in. We watched the paper turn black, then orange, then gone. We packed not like fugitives, but like movers who know what matters. 2 duffels. Tools. A photo of his mother that didn't lie. Cash split into stupid places, the soles of shoes, the lining of an old coat, the hollow handle of a screwdriver. The kind of hiding you do when you finally understand that money is only ever a bridge, never an address. Where to? He asked. Where no one knows my name means anything, I said. Coast. Or desert. Places where a man can be background without trying. He nodded, then surprised me. Before we go, he said, I want to do one thing. He led me back to the ravine where we'd done the thing we don't name. The air felt different, emptied by our guilt. He carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth. We stood where the dirt was too firm and too new. I didn't say sorry, he said. No, I agreed. You didn't. He crouched, unwrapped the bundle, just the ring's empty box, the one from behind Marquez's cabinet, and inside it a scrap with one word, enough. We buried that box where the other secret slept. A marker that didn't mark. He pressed the soil down with his palms. When he stood, His hands were filthy and clean at the same time. "Pop," he said, watching the ground. "Did I become you?" "No," I said. "You became someone who survived me." He breathed, a sound like choosing. On the walk back, we passed a wall with new graffiti sprayed across what had been there yesterday. It said, in shaky letters, "Tell the truth or hide it well." I laughed despite myself. "What?" he asked. "Both men I used to be think that's advice," I said. "The man I'm trying to be hopes we won't need it." We left the keys to the shop under the mat because superstition is a cousin to mercy. Someone else would come along, needing 4 walls and a roof that smelled like work. Let them have it. Let the bell complain about better men. At the edge of the city, a bus idled like patience. We climbed aboard with our duffels and sat near the back like people who know exits. He leaned his head against the window and watched the streets blur. Castillo texted a single line, 2 days bought. Use them like lungs. I didn't answer. Some messages are better left in the chest. We rode until the skyline looked like a rumor. Night took the windows and gave them back. He fell asleep in the way only kids who've seen too much can. Fast, hard, fists unclenched. I watched his reflection in the glass and saw the boy I had almost turned into a ledger entry. In the dark, with the engine humming, I counted the lies we didn't need anymore. I used to think the best thing I could teach was how to hide cash. But money rots. Even in good wood. Today my son showed me what matters. You hide your blood. Not in floorboards, not in drains, in plain sight, in daylight, in choices that don't invite men with clean suits and dirty hands. We got off in a town that didn't care how your story ended as long as you bought a coffee and said thank you. The motel had a vacancy sign like a prayer. We paid in cash small enough not to be remembered. In the room, he dropped his bag and looked at me like he was asking permission to grow up. "You don't have to be me," I said. "What else is there?" he asked, half joking, half scared. "Plenty. Mechanic. Cook. Ghost that haunts nobody. Man who sleeps." He nodded and lay down on a bed that sagged like a promise, and for the first time in months I believed we might make it to morning without having to explain ourselves to a gun. Before I killed the light, I pulled the recorder from my pocket. I pressed the button and spoke into the room. "For the record," I said softly, "I taught my son to hide cash. He taught me to hide a blood. If anyone's listening, tell Moreno's kind we're not carrying ledgers anymore. Tell Marquez's kind we paid. Tell the kid I used to be that surviving isn't the same as winning, but it's close enough to keep breathing." I clicked it off. Outside, a train moaned, far away, like an old animal telling one last story. I slid the recorder under the mattress, not as evidence, not as insurance. Just as a reminder.